I'm Matt Sandoval with Living House Beer Company, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest is Oli Banks of Stigbergets Brewery, and he's here for a conversation that goes beyond the brew house and into topics that matter to the brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers. First, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at All About Beer. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out allaboutbeer.com/support. We'll get into the conversation in just a moment, but first, this message.
Today's episode is brought to you by StompStickers.com, trusted by thousands of breweries across the country. They've been printing for over 30 years, and they know beer branding inside and out. Whether you need beer labels, keg collars, coasters, beer boxes, or more, they've got the expertise you need, all backed by a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Try your first run with StompStickers.com and get 15% off with code TRY15. That's TRY15 by visiting StompStickers.com. This German flavor break is brought to you by Weyermann Specialty Malts, crafted in Bamberg, Germany, and trusted by brewers worldwide for depth, color, and flavor. With a portfolio of over 90 malts, Weyermann provides the tools to build anything from crisp pilsners with Pilsner Malt to rich Märzens layered with Munich and Vienna. Even complex dark beers using Caramunich and Special W. Whether you're refining a classic European style or pushing modern recipes, order Weyermann from RahrBSG. As an industry-leading keg management partner, Keg Logistics delivers premium stainless steel kegs with the flexibility you truly need. Whether you're kegging your first batch or scaling your distribution, choose the program that fits. Rent to own, flexible term leasing, or pay per fill. Get top quality kegs without massive upfront costs and terms that grow with you. Thousands of brewers, cider makers, and wineries trust Keg Logistics to keep production flowing. Head to keglogistics.com/allaboutbeer for your custom quote. Keg Logistics, your kegs, your choice.
Welcome, and I'm very pleased to have Oli Banks as my guest today. Oli is the current head brewer of Stigbergets Brewery in Gothenburg, Sweden, though originally from Yorkshire in the UK. He started brewing while studying for a chemical engineering master's degree at Birmingham. His first job was with Carlsberg, UK, and Oli quickly realized that he much preferred the craft beer approach to brewing, although he did love the pure technology and industrial might of Carlsberg. While studying, he worked part-time at his local brewery, Magic Rock, and eventually, after graduating, found himself in London working for Beavertown Brewery. After a few years, he got the opportunity to move to Gothenburg and found himself being heavily involved in building and expanding the now large production brewery in the center of the city. These days, Oli is working mainly with optimization and efficiencies at Stigbergets. Oli, welcome to the podcast. Happy to get to chat with you today.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Kind of as we mentioned there just a moment ago, you started out in the UK at a couple of spots and then moved on to Gothenburg. And I'm kind of curious how you found your way to Stigbergets.
I mean, I think it was, I guess, like the craft beer world felt a bit, at least the European one, felt a bit smaller back then compared. I mean, it felt like everyone really knew each other. I mean, you kind of do feel like that as well today. But I can remember I met the guys at some Swedish beer festival that I was sent over for, and then they were looking to hire a new brewer, and I just fancied a change of scenery. Like London was great, but it's a tough place to live on a brewer's salary. Let's put it that way. And then, yeah, the opportunity arose, and we had like a bit of other social pressures because Brexit was coming, so we were soon losing our ease of moving and traveling to other European countries, and I was able to just move and live there. So it's kind of if I don't jump on this, it might make my life considerably harder to kind of do something similar in the future. Sure. So yeah, it just got chatting to the guys. Initially, they just wanted someone to brew beer whilst they were starting the big brewery up. But then after I kind of joined, and like a lot of the Swedish brewing scene is typically kind of like, it's kind of like on the two ends of the spectrum. You've got really, really small home brewers doing well, growing up and becoming professional. and then the mega macro. But this kind of mid-range still, even now, does massively, the jump between like the biggest craft brewery and then the macros is still monstrous. So they didn't have as much, like a lot of brewers haven't had the same amount of mid God, would you guys refer to it as like a regional brewery almost? Like a big one, but not the biggest ever. But you've got a bit more brewing techie experience than just the raw kind of theory. So that was when it kind of made, well, as we just found, it made more sense for me to spend time building and expanding and getting the production brewery online, because that was where most of my prior knowledge had kind of been seated, rather than just running our old smaller brew house.
Yeah, I think when I first met you, you guys had the plans for the larger space, but we're still just at the small brewery. But I could see the kind of commitment to quality and a slow and I guess kind of tempered expansion to get you guys into the place that you are now. I'm just kind of curious what your maybe what your goals were for yourself, and maybe how you saw that align with the company's goals to grow into a larger brewery.
I mean, I think it was because to me, it was always quite, I guess, the word larger, or what a larger brewery was, because sometimes I think the word, people use the word and it almost, you feel like, oh, a large brewery is dangerous. Or, the second you get big, you start cutting corners. But like the size we currently are is still smaller than when I was at Beavertown, and we grew 20-fold, I think, at the time I was there in London. But because they had the right, I guess, the right people, the right mindset, like I think all the way up until I left, the beer just got better and better and better. And it was all about meeting demand. And I think it was one of our QC guys always said, is like, it's the never-ending fight, because you can give them 100 good batches, but the customer will always remember that one bad one. So you got to stop that happening. And we were, to be fair, in the early days, we were a little. It was, we weren't cavalier, but it was like I remember we were told, Lucas, myself, and Simon were told, okay, you've got 3 test batches that if we dump them, it's not the end of the world. We can afford it. So just you have 3 practice runs, and then we need to get some beer out. And then that really quickly, after the first batch came out, we weren't 100% happy with it. It was like, oh yeah, sorry, we revisited the bank on Monday. Yeah, no, we got to sell this. So I was like, oh, okay. And I mean, there was like heaps of problems coming up, and it was, we did maybe not like massive amounts of changes, but like things that used to work at the old brewery didn't work at the new one. And I kind of like the classic one that I think it wasn't just us at the time that was, but because we were known for just making 2 hazy IPAs, that's all we could have the production space for. And then for some reason, when we brewed the first batch at the big brewery, it was pin bright clear. Like beers that today we're trying to make that clear weren't as clear as that bloody beer. And it's just, we were just like, we've just copy and pasted it. Why is it now not hazy? So it was, I don't know, we're not like cavalier in the sense of like, because we just had to keep batches going out the door. But so almost every batch of West Coast, it's called West Coast because we're on the West Coast of Sweden, but it's actually a hazy IPA for people who just don't understand. People who do understand beer styles, which I'm sure is anyone listening. For some reason, we decided to name our flagship hazy IPA West Coast, so we cause a lot of confusion to the Swedish beer world.
I love
But I,
that.
it was every batch felt like almost like a test batch, and we were lucky. I think we can't deny that we had a strong brand and a strong following that we could get away with a few, like we won't say they were bad batches, but like, a 7 or an 8 out of 10 rather than a 10 out of 10 that you were hoping for. And we could be a bit risky, kind of making like, well, if we're doing tiny, tiny tweaks, it might be years and years and years until we found what works here. So we just did some big sweeping changes until we found like, okay, now we actually get how all this new equipment works to do. In the end, the output obviously is we want to recreate the same beer that we were always creating, but just so yeah, and it was. I think back to like when we had all the kind of kooky things we used to do because we also like ran out of money. Obviously, you're starting a big brewery and like all the you used to have to CIP the whole brew house just by using the Lauterton as like a underback just to hold the caustic in. That
Uh-huh.
was like how he did tanks and everything. And it was all right back then because there was two of us just brewing about 2 batches a week. But then it was quickly when we got to the point of full speed, it's like, yeah, we kind of need a proper CIP set, don't we?
Yeah, so that kind of leads me into something else that I've, really paid attention to with you guys in particular is I've seen it from as an outsider, but as you guys have grown, the understanding for quality and being able to afford things and whatnot has always been kind of top of mind for you, or at least what I've
Mm.
seen. And I think that you've built a really great team to support that as you guys could start to afford it. And now that you're in a space where things seem to be working and stable, how do you consider or how do you continue to focus on quality, whether it be, you know, maybe ingredient selection or QC or what?
I think to be fair, Erica definitely takes the so our QC manager Erica, she joined us 5 years ago. There's always something that was top of my mind, but back when you're doing production planning and full-time brewing and everything else, you're like, I want to focus on this, but there just isn't enough hours in the day. And she's got a real gifted mind for quality approaches, and she's really keen on that kind of stuff. Um, so she was a godsend, and I think one of her mottos is always like, well, the main thing with QC is it's like shining a torch in a dark room. You might not like what you see, but it's always been there. So like I mean, for us, obviously ingredients have always been very high. It's like I've been lucky working under or with lots of fantastic brewers that now have gone on to do other wonderful things, but like very simple mantras that one of an old friend of mine, Katie, she used to brew for a Swiss brewery, and she was always like, "Yeah, well, I mean, it's like anything, shit ingredients." Shit in is going to be shit out. So you need to make sure you've got a good starting point. You can't expect a miracle off bad quality stuff. And I think because we have such a strong brand that was known for being high quality. Or I've had a very easy life, never having to argue with like our CEO over the cost of hops or other bits. Always been like, well, if it keeps the quality high, then we will and can spend more, which is been look. It's been nice for me not having to argue over like cents and pennies here or there on kilo on hops to look for a cheaper alternative because the second I go, well, it's better for the quality. Um, our CEO is just like, well, in that case, and that's the direction we should go. And I think it's one of these the even now it feels sometimes like we've got to a comfy spot, but then there's always new problems that you'd never known could have occurred or just hadn't like never some things that just hadn't been issues before that just appear out of nowhere. And so it's I guess it's the thing with just quality in a QC program is that the work's never stopped. You're just constantly refocusing where you're looking at. And by the you take your eyes off one area and then that's where you start to have issues. But it helps having a team that are very keen on doing just making good beer.
Yeah. So getting, I guess, a little more focused on some of your ingredients. Obviously, you've talked about you guys making a lot of a hazy IPA over the years. I feel like that's something that I saw you guys lean into pretty early on. I'm curious what your approach is to hop selection for, I don't know, maybe the big three hops when you're typically going to put them in hazy IPA, but you also use them for West Coast. Do you look for specific qualities out of, a Citra or a Mosaic or a Simcoe, or Southern Hemisphere hops for that matter?
I mean, yeah, we're lucky because we get to come out see you guys once a year, and spend a lot of time in Yakima doing selection. And I even tested New Zealand selection earlier this year, and I think it's good having like Eric and I have distinct preferences. Like for me, I find it quite funny because everyone always talks about like you think sort of with the name Citra, you want the big citrusy nose. Was I've always preferred more citrusy Mosaic and more tropical Citra. Like I think it was Toppling Goliath beer, their main one. I remember having it at a beer festival out here. And they were just like, oh yeah, it's just an all Citra pale ale. And I was like, but this is like mango juice. Like this is the kind of Citra I really dig. So that's what I'm always like on the hunt out for. Like I'm not saying we don't want the citrusy characteristics on notes, but I really dig that tropical mango pineapple forward Citra. Um, and I think it's another one that we obviously we go to hop the selection on the cones themselves, but then it's always interesting to find like we've over the years we've like Eric and I have been making her more than me extensive notes on like certain aromas we find on the leaves and how they like keep our notes and compare them to when we get the T90s fresh, and then also see how that looks like 6 months in. Which of these kind of so like, in the very beginning it was like okay, it's really got that sweaty tangerine peel mosaic off the whole cones, and then it's really strong when it's fresh T90, but then in 6 months actually that kind of sweatiness is softened a little bit, and it's now more the um, sweet tangerine and getting some of that blueberry character. So it's interesting. I mean, there's not much you can do because you're gonna wait for the next harvest for new bits. But I think we like to hunt out the. For me, I always think just a general if a hop's got a real pungentness to it, like a real intense aroma, we found that also really nicely translates to our consumer base. Like that, we noticed that hops that we even think to ourselves like, "Oof, this is sweaty, leaning to like when the finished beers like this is sweaty, leaning almost towards unpleasant, but it's on the cusp." We've got like dedicated fans that hit our tap room up every new beer release, and they are going mad for it. Like, yes, this is what we want. We want that. It smells like it's just come out of a brewery, and I mean, it's a bit like as you know, you can us brewers have slightly different, they're not slightly different, but everyone's got their own personal opinion on what makes a beer good. But where you still have to make sure that the people actually buying your beer are enjoying it, and that's something that we're lucky with our a few bar locations. We get quite a lot of like active feedback. Doesn't speak for everyone, but it's better than like sometimes you can kind of be um so when you're a production brewery, you can get a little insular where you're just like you and the team, we're trying every batch and we think one thing, but then for all we know, there's all our customers are going like, oh, the beer isn't as good as it used to be, but you don't get any of that feedback. So we're lucky, and I do hunt down like Jens and Deezer and Johan for like some active like what did people think? Because I thought this beer was a bit too much, and oh no, we sold that keg almost immediately. So clearly it's not. But then that influences a lot of our hop, I think, choices. Like we look at our notes every year, and I think it was my favorite mosaic was been our 2024 or something. There was something about it, and I just annoyingly, Erica's better at note taking than me. It just I just put something weird but love it, and then that was I've never been able to find the weird but love it aroma compound or what I meant at that moment.
Yeah, that's always something that I saw when I used to work at a larger brewery, and to some extent at my smaller brewery now, is I'll go in top selection. I'm like, okay, I want these qualities from these hops. And maybe you find them on the table and you're like, all right, that's great. We've got something that matches, maybe like it's destined for like a core brand, and it's like we're going to use a lot of this and this, so we want it to be this way. But then you find something a little out of the box, and it's like, well, this is the best thing I've ever smelled. So I just want
Mm,
that. And then you have to, kind of debate in your head, like, are we going to change, you know, what either that beer should be so that we can get this, or do we kind of stick with the tried and true, maybe just get a little bit of that? It's always kind of a fun game for me.
yeah, I think it's one of those that the like ultimately you have to keep your customer in mind when you do things. But I think that's where like we typically keep the big because I think Mosaic and Citra are 80% of our total hop, but like many other people, like 80% of our total hop contract. But because like our core brands are like nicely stabilized, but we're having more seasonals that are picking up, we've been like I think we've done it every year now where we go to see Crosby have a European spot showcase. So if you don't contract enough to um, do selection under them, they'll still invite you out to be like, hey, okay, so here are the lots that are going to come to Europe. We've already pre-decided which ones are heading your way. And we can pre-order like as little as a bag, like 5 kilos. So we've been having a lot of fun as well, just kind of picking up, like getting a sneak preview of what's coming our way, and then be like, okay, so we'll take 6 boxes of that estate grown comet or that cascade was really amazing. It makes it, I think it makes a huge difference. We're very privileged in that respect that we get these behind the scenes. It was the same with my first trip out to New Zealand to do hop harvest there. And like there was because Nelson particular, we use a good chunk of that. And that is to me, it's such a varied hop. Like I had 8 to pick from, and all of them were fabulous, but they were all so different. I was like, bloody hell, which Nelson do we want?
Yeah, that's something that I deal with as well. I call Nelson a very finicky hop.
Mm,
It doesn't know what it wants to do half the time, and half the time I don't know what I want out of it. But same kind of thing, like when I find, characters that I love in it, then I get real happy. But it's the importance of selection.
yeah, I mean, I think it's more than because I know we had it's not just we won't be the only people, but we had a Galaxy. I mean, it also might be obviously a change, but Galaxy used to be one of my favorite hops ever because we used it in 2 of our core range beers back at Beavertown. And then when I got here, and we just got like duff batch after duff batch, and I was like, this can't be the same. The boxes are the same as we used to have in London. How is it different? And then um, we got to a point that we'd ordered. What was it, Galaxy? Or was it something else? We ordered a hop, and it was just too small for selection. And then you stuck. We didn't particularly like it, but then you're stuck with like 300 kilos of the stuff. So then you're like, oh God, do we just try and sprinkle it in a little bit of everything to hopefully just use it as bittering constantly, just to try and get rid of it. Whereas now we've kind of so like we try and bulk cover the main core stuff with a little bit of surplus off the selected contract. And I mean, it was a bit expensive, so it's hard to know if we'll regularly do the New Zealand trip. But they were really good on again, just like, hey, so you've selected your Nelson, but we've got a lot of other hops. If you want to sniff what we're just harvesting this very second, and if you like any of it, we'll put it on your pallet going to Belgium. Like, oh, okay. So I end up buying 200 kilos of a really interesting batch of Nectaron, because which sounds like a lot of hops, but for us that might go to 3 batches ish if we're using it quite um, sparingly, or 2 if we're going quite liberal. But it's I think a fun way. I think it's quite nice if we can continue doing that kind of. I mean, yeah, IPAs, hoppy beers are our bread and butter. So covering the core stuff, maybe playing it safer on just them, maybe not going for the crazy over the top stuff, but just we know it's going to keep making good of the core brands, and then picking out a few interesting ones uh, from the harvest year to then actually play around with. Because I think and what I hear from a lot of beer festivals and stuff here, which I always take as quite a good compliment, is that a lot of the heavy beer people always seem to think that like our core range is reliable but not the most interesting, but our specials are always really fun. And it's like, well, yeah, that sounds like we're doing it semi right then, because we want most people who drink our beer are just everyday people who just want a nice beer. And you can always rely on us to have a good standard beer. But then we do our small batch special releases, is where we go over the top, and it does cost a bit more money. So you don't want to alienate your main market, but you do want to keep the tickers happy as well.
Yeah. Um, we're going to take a short break for this message and then come right back for more of this conversation with Oli Banks of Stigbergets Brewery.
Today's episode is brought to you by StompStickers.com, trusted by thousands of breweries across the country. They've been printing for over 30 years, and they know beer branding inside and out. Whether you need beer labels, keg collars, coasters, beer boxes, or more, they've got the expertise you need, all backed by a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Try your first run with StompStickers.com and get 15% off with code TRY15. That's TRY15 by visiting StompStickers.com. This German flavor break is brought to you by Weyermann Specialty Malts, crafted in Bamberg, Germany, and trusted by brewers worldwide for depth, color, and flavor. With a portfolio of over 90 malts, Weyermann provides the tools to build anything from crisp pilsners with Pilsner Malt to rich Märzens layered with Munich and Vienna. Even complex dark beers using Caramunich and Special W. Whether you're refining a classic European style or pushing modern recipes, order Weyermann from RahrBSG. As an industry-leading keg management partner, Keg Logistics delivers premium stainless steel kegs with the flexibility you truly need. Whether you're kegging your first batch or scaling your distribution, choose the program that fits. Rent to own, flexible term leasing, or pay per fill. Get top quality kegs without massive upfront costs and terms that grow with you. Thousands of brewers, cider makers, and wineries trust Keg Logistics to keep production flowing. Head to keglogistics.com/allaboutbeer for your custom quote. Keg Logistics, your kegs, your choice.
Ollie, thanks for talking with me about kind of your approach to hops and selection. But there was something that you mentioned kind of at the tail end of that about beer fests, and I'm very curious to talk to you about the differences that I see of what's currently going on in the States and maybe what's going on in Europe. And I'd love to get your input on, I guess, how customers are finding your beer now. Like, are beer fests important in Europe? How do they affect your overall sales, and how else do customers find your beer?
I mean, I think beer is a funny one for us because we're shrinking down the kind of numbers that we go to, because we have the pool of people we have to go out, travel to festivals is slimmer, and everyone's busier. So it really can become quite a drain on. They used to be always like, oh, it's almost like a mini holiday weekend, pulling some pints, having some beers. And now that they got to a point where anyone going was just like, oh, I've had a really rough week. I don't want to go to this beer. It took the joy and love out of it. And we've noticed a lot of beer festivals here have either stopped, downsized, because I mean, yeah, in like the craft beer peak of Europe, like 20, probably would have been like 2016 to just before COVID. And there was like a beer festival every weekend. It was always really busy and people were going mad for it. But I think it got to a point that even the consumer, because I guess it was like the same names at different places, and it's really good, to see some if they're foreign breweries coming to your local area that you know of and want to try, you can actually try it usually fresh and in a good standard of quality. But it also, I don't know, it's like the kind of um, we find at least that back in the day where the customer was really keen to chat to you about your beer specifically and like get to know you a little bit, it's not quite the same as it used to be. It's country to country in Europe dependent. There's some you go to and they're really keen to chin wag, and we try and keep notes on not about whether we um, like or prefer festivals, but just kind of like, oh, this is one where you will have your ear chewed off for 3 4 hours, and that's just so we can also prepare our staff, people who might want to just be a bit more, just want to pour beer and see the place. Okay, maybe this one isn't for you. Maybe you want to go to this one where people are typically a lot more sticking to themselves. But I mean, I think it's why, as we did our little beer fest. What was it, a month ago,
Eh,
two,
yeah, something like that. Month and a
just
half.
um, because one thing I personally dislike, and I don't know if the consumer does or what, but this kind of we used to we call it like in house the playing the festival game, where you might have packed some really big beers that you're really proud of and you'll find really interesting, but they're not the classic high marking untapped beers, and so you feel like you're not always giving a fair representation of what you are. So that's why we did our little one where it was like, okay, we'll have overall a smaller number of breweries, but we want about 4 beers on display, so you don't have to be thinking, oh, I need to take 3 different quadruple dry hopped IPAs and a pastry stout. Yeah, oh well, actually, I can bring the lager that I really was a fan of and have the big hoppy IPA. And I think where the feedback we got from our customers was like, it's great. You can actually try everything because it's not there's 9,000 beers to try today, and then you just see bodies everywhere, just unable to consume anymore. Um, but people are just keen to try the beer, and then like, I mean, I loved it personally just because you see, it wasn't like you had to do anything you didn't want to. Like, oh, I have to go out and try beers. I saw some people that were just having almost the same beer 9 times in a row because they just like, well, I'm sure there's more good ones on offer, but this one I really like, and am I going to get to try it again? Probably not, or not for a while. Um, but yeah, the overall like festival circuit around here is definitely shrunk down, and I think brewers from both sides, I think the brewers are a bit more mature now in the industry itself, and realizing there's festivals you go to because you want to maintain relationships with particular breweries or people, um, but they are effort, so you've got to kind of balance out like what is going to be worth it to you in the end. And you have some that might be, oh, we're just, we started importing into France, so we probably want to hit the French beer festivals a few bits in a row to kind of get our name out there. Um, but I mean, for us, it's also we sell 95% of our beer in Sweden, so that's where we focus most the
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah, so I'm curious, you know, if you're only selling 5% of your beer at these fests throughout, mostly the rest of Europe, um, do you feel like that is a necessary like use of the brewery's time and your time, or is it more of just sharing who you guys are?
I mean, I think it's a bit of both because it's always good to introduce yourself to a new market, even if it's not going to be a huge revenue stream or anything. Being you getting to represent yourself is always a good way, rather than just sending beer to an importer, and it's not giving them criticism, but you rely on someone else to show you off, and it might not be the way you want to be. But I mean, for me, I think it's more the importance I always find is meeting and connecting with new people, because the amount of people we've been fortunate to meet just at beer festivals, friends of friends, people you've heard of, you get to try, and then you're like, oh, actually, I'm coming your way anyway for this reason or that reason. Do you mind if I pop in? And then I think the amount of I made a spreadsheet about of new beer tech, like process techniques or styles or other things that we have achieved based upon um, trips like Hop Harvest, beer festivals, and stuff. Where if you look at, okay, how much did it cost to send me um, my hours, a hotel, and then we sold 4 kegs of beer, and you're like, well, this is just a massive loss. But then say, well, actually, yes, but also that was where we met that person who taught us that trick that now we get 4% more on every batch of our main beer, which then you put those numbers in, you're like, well, that beer fest in fact was very, very profitable if you look at it that way.
Yeah.
So I think it's for me now, I'm always keen to do them in theory, but I know I can also overextend myself and say yes to a few too many things, and then be like, I do not have the energy to constantly be on, managing the brewery on a flight somewhere and then missing the family. It's just kind of always it gets to a point of like, I think now I try and do every other month max ish. And it gives our newer brewers chance to go explore and do all the things that I've had plenty of opportunities to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really great approach. I look at traveling for fest and getting our beer out to other markets in the same way that it's invaluable in the relationships that you build and the information that you glean off each other. It doesn't always have to be a collab where you spend a day or a half a day hanging out with a group of brewers to learn something. Like, you can definitely have wonderful conversations, in the middle of a grassy field or on the asphalt in some parking lot.
Yeah.
So I do think that they are still very beneficial for all of us. Um, One thing that I did notice at your fest was that you had a little brewer's perk in the back, and that was a cask, well, a couple of casks of
Mm.
a Taylor landlord that you had brought out for the brewers. And I'm curious, what is your fascination with cask ale?
I mean, I think you can ask a lot of. I mean, I'm picky as well, so I
Oh,
I
I know.
picked I picked it up from. I know my dad tells me stories of when. I think for me the fascination is when the switch of, because at some point almost all beer was like cask or cask-ish. It was all Belgian at one point, sour and wild, and then it became like there's old videos of Guinness being poured from like a high pressure barrel and a low pressure barrel, and cask as well being the idea that you've pumped it out of the barrel. There's no added CO2, and the history of it being, and that's like my dad told me stories of how he had his close friend when he was at university spent more time hunting down which pubs were serving the best pints, because with Cask being a living, breathing um, product, you can really, really easily fuck it up. So the back in the the 60s and 70s, having a good cellarman in your pub could be make or break, because if they knew how to look after the all the different beers, because you might have a cask from one brewery that needs to be vented and on within 12 hours, and another one that might need 48, and the brewer might have a slight change in that batch, which means knowing to react and serve it. It's like an art and a craft to it that I just found, and it's all because, as most Brits do, we absolutely adore the pub, and that being kind of what made the pub magical as well. Just it's a community spot, and also you've got this particular, because you couldn't get it at home, you couldn't get it in other places. It was like, this is a unique, you have to physically go to the pub to enjoy such a beer. Um, and I mean, it's, God, I'm getting thirsty just thinking about it. Cask just have endless energy for Cask. But I mean, I just, it's just something so appealing. The magic, like just the simplicity of, you've re-fermented it in the barrel, you need to rest it a little bit, pull it out and pour it correctly, which, as I'm a strong believer in, that once you get south of Birmingham, the Midlands in the UK, the cask quality does decline quite a lot, because Northerners, we make the better old beer. But there are spots that, that break the rules. But I mean, I think it's also a friend of ours, Reese from Donzoco Brewing. He's I'm loving what he's doing. So he's got his brewery up in Newcastle, and he's putting a lot of focus on his beers being that they're typically like more simple and approachable, like the nitro beer, the cask, lagers, and otherwise, they're all just pub beers. But he's putting a lot of effort into making sure that they're served and dealt with correctly. And he's got something we never had in Yorkshire, which is a deliberately banked beer. So back in, I think this was Hartlepool, rather than, it was over Newcastle generally, but in Hartlepool where he's from, because a lot of the workers would always get off the pub, off working in the pub at 4 o'clock on the dot. You'd have two people in there, then you'd have 300 people within the space of 2 minutes, and you had to supply pints as quick as possible. So it was a really common thing up in the northeast you'd have the same beer on two hand pulls. One was really lively and unsparkled, and then the other one was maybe a day or two mature and sparkled. And you'd just pull aggressively the lively pint, get basically a glass of foam, and then you shove it in the fridge. Then when the people came in, that would have settled to about a half pint, and then you just top it up just to hand over. So rather than pulling a pint, you just top up that last little bit, and it creates the hilarious foam that's like about half the size of the pint glass just sitting out. And one of his new beers and he's a militant that it's only served at, like, because with Cass, he doesn't often travel well. You really know what you're doing with it. He's got, I think, like 18 pubs just in the Newcastle area that sell the beer and will only sell the beer. He won't send it further away, further afield. And I do miss that with, I know that there's some beers that, I love that kind of magistry and the amazing of just like, oh, well, that's a great beer. Oh, how can we ship it there? It's like, no, you can't. Because if you do that, it loses its um yeah, magicness. So no, if you want to try that one, you have to come here. And I love that aspect as well.
Uh, with just a few minutes left, can you give me a your approach to how you make cask ale?
So we typically do a handful of casks here and there. And I'm hoping to do more proper cask because at the moment I just do a lot of it's basically bright beer in a cask, and I make it extra lively so I can cellar it correctly um, before tapping it and putting it on the beer engine. I would like to. I mean, I haven't done it since I was at Magic Rock, proper cask conditioning, re-fermenting, but you have to do the whole batch of beer like that. So you just have to either you cask condition the whole lot or you're not doing any. That's the kind of unfortunate trade-off with these. Or it's really fiddly and difficult. I mean, in a country where cask is not a thing, it's yeah. I think for me the best approach to be able to offer an almost same product is and yeah, as a northerner, I like a lively cask. So it's essentially just putting really carefully, filling a cask with bright beer, making sure it is fizzy, because cask has that reputation of it's flat. And it's not flat. More often than not, you've just had like a 2 or 3 day old cask on the pub that hasn't been cellared properly and it has got no life to it. Because if it's too lively, you can just vent it another day and it'll be perfect. But if it's not lively enough, then there's now what you can do.
Yeah.
So it's a bit cheating, but it works to recreate a good version of the product.
Okay. Um, well, I think I've had a great time chatting with you today, and learning a bit more about you and how your brewery approaches IPA and beer in general, and uh, your affection for cask ale, which
We could do a whole episode just on that, to be honest.
yeah, I don't know. You've definitely, I've had plenty of cask beer over the years, but chatting with you now and then and getting to try stuff with you, my appreciation has grown immensely, and I'm very happy to. Well, I've got to know you over the years for a lot of things, but cask is a big one recently.
Cask is the yeah. If I can share the love, nothing makes me happier because especially for international brewers that don't get the love. Um, yeah, nothing makes me happier than, especially when I brought my missus to the UK for the first time, and she was like, well, I don't get why you're so obsessed with this." And I took her to one of my favorite pubs that served it the best pint of landlord at the time. That was the best pub for it. And then she was like, "Oh, I get it now. This is absolutely." She might have just been, being nice to me, but every time we're home with my parents, she always has pints of cask at the pub. So she's either doing a really good impression of a cast lover for keeping me happy, or she secretly likes it.
I bet she really likes it. Maybe 50-50. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. So, again, thank you so much for coming on the show, Ollie. I really appreciate it. And Ollie will be back on the next episode of this show as the host, having a conversation with a brewer of his choosing. That will be on the air next week, so make sure you tune in for all that. A reminder, visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at allaboutbeer. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out allaboutbeer.com/support. I'm Matt Sandoval of Living House Beer Company. Thank you for listening to the Brewer to Brewer podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by StompStickers.com, trusted by thousands of breweries across the country. They've been printing for over 30 years, and they know beer branding inside and out. Whether you need beer labels, keg collars, coasters, beer boxes, or more, they've got the expertise you need, all backed by a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Try your first run with StompStickers.com and get 15% off with code TRY15. That's TRY15 by visiting StompStickers.com. Weyermann Flavor Break is brought to you by Weyermann Specialty Malts, crafted in Bamberg, Germany, and trusted by brewers worldwide for depth, color, and flavor. With a portfolio of over 90 malts, Weyermann provides the tools to build anything from crisp pilsners with Pilsner Malt to rich Märzens layered with Munich and Vienna. Even complex dark beers using Caramunich and Special W. Whether you're refining a classic European style or pushing modern recipes, order Weyermann from RahrBSG. As an industry-leading keg management partner, Keg Logistics delivers premium stainless steel kegs with the flexibility you truly need. Whether you're kegging your first batch or scaling your distribution, choose the program that fits. Rent to own, flexible term leasing, or pay per fill. Get top quality kegs without massive upfront costs and terms that grow with you. Thousands of brewers, cider makers, and wineries trust Keg Logistics to keep production flowing. Head to keglogistics.com/allaboutbeer for your custom quote. Keg Logistics, your kegs, your choice.